Good day and welcome. I'm Derek Hagan. Celebrations for the 100th anniversary of the Accord of Unity are in full swing across the expanse of unionized space. Council nations prepare for the Council-proclaimed event of the century. In keeping with their promise to Council nations and to commemorate 100 years of unity, the Council will be opening the long-anticipated Unity Schools. These Unity Schools promising to deliver the best education money can afford. Even the recently integrated post-Federation nations who wants to oppose the Council will receive these schools, to show the Council's commitment to harmony and putting the past behind us. Even so, some post-Federation nations have openly stated that they do not want these schools, but the Council has in response stated that it is compulsory for post-Federation nations to receive these schools, as the values of the Council must be brought to the people who live in nations who may still harbour resentment. These schools are the first step towards integrating future generations. Undampened by the negativity, celebrations continue and are expected to culminate with a nationwide announcement from the Prime Speaker. We'll be with you until then. In other news, the market slumps as expenditure skyrockets. Many Council nations are preparing for another collaborative round of expansion. Advanced designs and space travel techniques have led to significant decreases in the cost of establishing colonies. Many participating nations are said to be preparing to launch up to 8 colony ships each, compared to just 1 colony ship each 90 years ago. Despite these reduced costs, 22% of all Council nations, half of them being post-Federation, are only preparing to launch as little as 2, or even none at all. Spokesmen of these nations have said that they cannot afford the upstart costs of new colony ships alongside the maintenance costs of still unprofitable colonies. Some Council nations have applied for additional funding, but at an all-time high of expenditure on projects such as the Council schools, many are expected to be kept waiting. Moving on, the discovery of space amoebas 23 years ago has up until recently been regarded as the most disappointing scientific discovery in history. These creatures, once thought to be evidence of advanced alien life, were discovered to have no cognitive function higher than simple bacteria. These giants have been left alone until recent reports emerged of these amoebas becoming aggressive and attacking nearby vessels, seemingly without provocation. The attacks have caused concern among many nations who depend on newly established trade routes, as even the loss of 1 cargo ship could leave a colony without food for months. In response, the Council has ordered the construction of 100 military corvettes, double the number they currently possess, to protect trade. These corvettes will be paid for and maintained by the Council for 5 years, after which nations must pay the maintenance cost for vessels protecting their own trade routes. Additionally, the Council has lifted the ban on researching these amoebas. Previously, the science community was barred from approaching these creatures due to concerns that they would provoke them. However, with the amoebas becoming aggressive, this is no longer a concern. We still have some time before the Prime Speaker begins his announcements, so we'll use this time to explain who exactly the Prime Speaker is and clarify how exactly the Council works. The Council of Unity is the presiding government of all nations who have signed the Accord of Unity. All nations who sign the Accord are known as Council nations, and collectively all Council nations form the Union. Council nations have less autonomy and provide part of their income to the Council. Council nation governments must also be democracies, though there is no specific voting system needed as long as it is democratic. In return, the Council distributes funding to nations dependent on their needs. To ensure net contributors are not exploited, the Council can lower international trade tariffs and taxes between these nations, and none of the additional profit goes back to the Council. They may also create trade deals between nations and set the terms. This is to ensure net contributors receive compensation for their loss of income. Organisation-wise, the Council is a multi-layered hierarchy. The inner ring is made of 12 Prime Councillors. No one knows the exact identity of these officials or how they are chosen for the position. What we do know is that they are also part of the second ring of the 360 seated councillors. 12 of these 360 seated councillors are the Prime Councillors. All of the Prime Councillors do not make their position known for security and anti-corruption measures. The third ring is made up of the national representatives. These are officials from their respective nations of origin who represent the interests of their respective nation. These representatives can have no position in their own nation's government besides the position of council representative, and must have no ties to corporations or other third parties. The third ring so far has 2,400 seats available. These seats are divided proportionally between nations based on the total population their people make up between all council nations. For example, a council nation whose population makes up 4% of the total population of all council nations combined would get 96 seats, which is 4% of 2,400. These representatives can draft bills, amendments, acts, edicts, or petition the council for aid for their country, or a collection of countries if multinational representatives collaboratively petition. To move from representative to councillor, there must be first a free seat. Seats only become empty when the councillor resigns, dies, or is removed. Representatives vote among themselves who fills the empty seats in several rounds until enough representatives are knocked out of the competition to fill the seats. But who is the Prime Speaker? The Prime Speaker is the spokesman of the 12 Prime Councillors and the wider council. He alone is the only person outside the inner circle who knows the identity of the Prime Councillors. The words of the Prime Speaker is a mixture of his own rhetoric and the will of the Council. And it seems we're out of time. The Prime Speaker is live.
$100 100 years. 100 years since the day we laid down our arms and surrendered ourselves to a greater goal. Few among us will have lived to know the days before. I myself never witnessed the savagery of the old centuries, and in another few decades, no one at all will know the day the accord was signed. Time goes on for all of us, and the ticking clock will never stop. And so goes on the fight against rot. Empires come and go, nations rise and fall, and at the core of all their tales is the malady of the human condition. Decadence and greed, corruption and selfishness. Competence and drive replaced by creaking cogs and leaky pipes over and over until naught but a shuddering engine remains, and no matter how much you polish the bonnet, the car will eventually break down. 100 years is a long time. Enough to forget what your ancestors fought for and built. Who appreciates hard-earned freedom when you did not earn it yourself? Who thanks the doctors who cured cancer and AIDS? Who thanks the soldiers who put the tyrants to the sword? Who thanks the farmer who ploughs the field? Who thanks the workman who fixes the roads? Who thanks the scientists who created the very devices you use to see me today? Who will thank us for the world we delivered you from when none of you were alive to see what it was before? Of course, most of you here today live better now than you did, say, 40 years ago. But your children will not live better. They will live the life you live now. And what of their children? There is only so many times an old man can say, "Back in my day," before the child stops listening. They will become contempt, as we are all inclined to do. So, what do? We never let them forget what we have right now is special. What we have right now is sacred. Starting in the schools we have provided, we will show them what once was and what is today. We will teach them about the present to save the future, lest we come to find ourselves standing in a desert, a stunning replica of the works of Ozymandias. So today, celebrate with all your heart. Truly rejoice in what we've accomplished. Let our hearts and minds be one in unity. We have lasted 100 years. let us last 1,000 more.